So welcome everybody to today's Play and Learn session 1, Introduction to Gamification. So we're very happy to collaborate with Gametize Academy, whereby they will share with us their expertise on gamification. Let me just do a brief introduction of the speakers. Of course, I wouldn't do them a lot of justice. I'll leave them to introduce more about themselves later on. I'll just do a brief introduction. So we have Keith with us. He works with clients to design solutions powered by Gametize, and he has over 10 years of experience in gamification, software engineering, and business IT consulting. And then I'll move on to Prapim. All right, she'll tell you more about her background later on. So she is the lead of Gametize's Creatives and Academy team with extensive experience as a mentor and instructor. So in her role at Gametize, she leads, conducts at Gametize's workshop series, which aims to educate learners on how to conceptualize, build, and implement a gamification strategy for a variety of use cases. And lastly, we have Kuma, who is part of the Gametize data and project management team. So he has core competencies in business analytics, project management, customer support, and data analytics. And he is part of Gametize's initiative that utilizes big data to streamline business processes within the company, as well as for clients. So I think I've spoken enough. I'll let the Gametize team, I'll hand the time over to the Gametize team. So I'll stop sharing. Oops, not yet.
Thank you, Tilly. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been helping you to do the emission just
Thank
now,
you so
so
much.
I think I'm doing it correctly. Yeah.
Thank
So I
you.
want to also introduce Prapim. Right. Prapim is the chief mastermind of today's session, and she's the head of academy. So I'll leave her. And I also want to thank Ling as well for setting this up. Right. We still haven't met face to face since talking at the start of this year. Right. But hopefully we can do that very soon. Okay, so Prapim, I'll let you take over right now. First, over to you.
All right. So Jiling actually gave a pretty good introduction, so I don't actually have too much to add to that. So I think for myself, it's just more, Keith was sharing before the session started that I didn't actually start off with a gamification background. So what I started off as was mainly as a designer. So as I joined Gametize, that's where I had more experience with gamification. And I guess Keith can also talk a bit more about his background here too.
Okay, so this is actually our first session doing it virtually, thanks to Ling. And as much as we are a digital company, we also like the good old ways of doing it through the physical way. So one of the things that we like to start off with in our presentation is talk about 3 fun facts about yourself, right? So Prapim, you can see some of the fun facts over there, right? She loves cats. She teaches art to children, right? Right? So that makes her actually competent enough to teach anything to anybody. If you can teach kids, you can teach everybody. Yeah. My 3 fun facts would be, I used to be a compulsive gamer myself, right? That's also one reason why I have realized how addictive gaming is and how it can bring value to the business world. And I'm a self-taught game designer, right? Which means really I'm not trained formally at all, right? But I trained myself playing a lot of games as a child. And I also went through some accelerator program in San Francisco. And one of the things that a lot of people do not realize is actually we started off with dating games. And that's how we transition to today's world, right? Creating games for the HR world or even for business world. So please keep on sharing what you do and what you like to see in today's session, right? We try also to adapt to you. And I think it's a lot of people with very various background, right? So Kuma, who is in the call, sitting silently, right? He will be running the platform training in, I believe, session 2. Is that correct, Prapim?
Yep. So Kuma and I will be doing the platform training today. We'll just show a short demo about halfway into the session on what the Gametize platform is. But if you want to learn a lot more about what Gametize actually can do, I do encourage you guys to join that session in 2 weeks' time.
All right.
Okay, so I'll just go through the agenda. So we'll just give you some of you do the basics there. We'll also do some design motivational principles just to kind of learn like what motivates people to become engaged. And then the last thing we're going to run through today is something called the 5D framework. So that's actually a framework that we've devised by ourselves, and this is what we use as a gamification framework for when we're building up strategies for our clients. So you can, hopefully by the end of today, you can walk away with it and kind of start using it to build up your use case as well. Okay, so I guess what I can encourage you guys to do perhaps later on after this session is actually to download the Gametize app and kind of play some demo games on there to kind of see what we actually do. So in short, we're a gamification technology solution, and we have a lot of gamification elements in our app. So people can do things such as all these types of challenges, take quizzes, etc., and then get points for that. And they can do things also such as competing, leaderboard, chatting with others, gaining points, and redeeming the points with for rewards, earning achievements, etc. So yeah, better for you guys to download it and see how Gametize actually works. Okay, so here's the definition of gamification. So it's the use of game design, game psychology, and especially the important thing you can see we really highlighted is non-game settings. And the main intention is always to engage and motivate your target audience. So it can be people such as learners in most of the cases of the people in this session today for target behaviors. Okay, so importantly also, it's a process, not endpoint. So I think it's similar to pretty much like every other strategy that you have. You've never really fully finished engaging your consumers. You're always trying to engage employees continuously as well as your consumers. So that's why we never say we've successfully gamified something. It's always just a process that can be improved upon. Okay, so what we're going to do now is also kind of show some examples and ask whether it's gamification or not. I think that some of you attended our sessions before, so please no cheating. And I guess Dealing will ask you as well what you think of these. Okay, so Dealing, do you use Fitbit or any kind of fitness trackers?
Not really. I use the Apple Health app.
Okay. So what do you use it for usually?
To track my steps. But recently my steps have been like 100.
Yeah, my steps have been around 8,000. It used to be 8,000. Now it's probably, I'm lucky if I hit 800 in a day.
Yeah, right.
Okay, okay, so I think Fitbit, I probably won't ask because it's pretty clear that it's gamification. So it's gamification in the sense that you're tracking a non-game setting. So the non-game setting in this case is obviously like tracking your steps, tracking your health. You've got all these. Okay, let me try this annotation actually. Yeah, so you got all of you can see like people track the health, and not only that, but also how many miles you've walked, calories, etc. Okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to get used to this annotation.
Cool, you're doing it well. Good.
Okay, so I think that another very important part of gamification for Fitbit also is they have things such as the badges, as you can see there. So it's not just, you're looking at how many steps you've taken a day. You're also able to do things such as compete with your friends on the leaderboard, message your friends to kind of keep track of how they're doing. And then you can also see in the first screen, there's the feedback telling you like almost there. So that's something that's also really important in gamification, is that it always tells you how well or not well you're doing. Okay, so there's also the motivational aspect where you're able to compete with friends. So things such as earning badges and also seeing kind of like, are you better than or worse than other people? But I suppose right now we're all about the same. I hope some of you are still like going out jogging and getting your exercise. But yeah, that's Fitbit is a really good example of gamification because they really clearly show, your progress there. So it's rather than, you're just kind of keeping track in your head. It actually tells you how well you're doing compared to other people, and also like, maybe the day before. Okay, so here is Duolingo. So, okay, Dealing, do you use Duolingo?
I have tried it once or twice. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Okay. What languages do you use it for?
Well, to be honest, I have learned Italian. So when I was trying it, I was trying out Dutch.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I've also been trying, but okay, so one of the things that Duolingo does is it teaches you languages. You can see the basics. Each day, you might only spend about a minute or two on very basic languages, and then as you progress, you level up. You can see the progress of how you're doing for each module, and also like whether you're earning levels. So you can see the crown level. So leveling up is also another indicator of gamification. It gives you a very clear indicator of how well you're doing. So there's also the achievements you can see there and what you've earned. And I think one thing that's very good for Duolingo is they do something called a daily goal and also a streak, as you can see there. So I think that if you guys have played a lot of games, you know that when you log in and you complete certain activities every single day, that you get the streak, right? And then if you forget to log in for one day, you'll lose the streak immediately. So something that Duolingo actually did was that they took some data of, when are people actually logging into the app and trying to complete their daily challenges. And they realized most people tend to log in kind of on the way to work or after work on the weekdays only. They don't really tend to log in on the weekends. And then they also realized that actually once people lost their streak, they might have forgotten on the weekend, let's say, for example, right? And then they don't log in, and then they log in on Monday and realize they lost their streak. Actually, it's even more demotivating. They realize a lot of people actually just dropped off completely. So that's one thing, of course, they wanted to avoid. So actually what they did was they came up with a weekend amulet. So you can see there that you have to buy it for 20 lingots. So lingots is like the currency system that they use. And then it protects your streak for 2 days on the weekend. And then when you come back, you can continue as normal. So that's one example of something that's already been successfully implemented, and then they realized that, okay, the streaks are working, but there's this major flaw. How do we fix that? And then they actually did the weekend amulet to kind of fix the drop-off rate there. Okay, so I'll just give a description of what this is. We've got a poll for you guys for this one. Okay, so this is a medical simulation. So it's for medical students to come in and train themselves on how to, conduct a consultation, what they should be doing in a certain situation. So I think that, this is similar to a lot of the flight simulators that I think many of you have seen before. So I think Dealing's going to pull up the poll.
All right, yeah. Okay, so is it time for me to launch the poll now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
All right. So just give a bit of a think whether you think it's gamification or not.
Wow. Coming in fast and furious.
To be honest, this is the first time I'm seeing this in Zoom.
Good. I think Zoom has a lot of functions.
Yeah, like a lot of things we didn't know about, actually.
Yeah, just have to try out. And click here, click there, just try out.
Okay, I think we have the tribe has spoken, right?
We have
65%.
Okay, we have 80%. Anybody else still voting? If not, we would share the results. Okay, 80% is a good percentage. Okay, let me just share the results. Wow, quite cool.
All right, so it looks like there's a pretty clear consensus about most people think this is gamification. Okay, what about Jiling yourself? What do you think?
I think yes. Let's go with the majority.
Yeah, this is where I can come in. Let's let Prapim take a quick breather. This is what we typically call in the industry serious gaming, right? So there's a slight difference. Right, serious gaming typically are more immersive in experience, right? They are typically also much more immersive in pricing as well, right? So a typical simulation like that, there's a lot of 3D graphics, there's a lot of animations, right? You can expect the cost to be anywhere from 500,000 USD all the way to even 2 or 3 million USD, right, to develop the game. There's a lot of work involved. There's music, there's sound, there's narrative, There's also graphics designs, and typically a very strong team of programmers. Now, one of the biggest challenge with serious gaming is change management, right? So because they're so immersive in nature, right? If there's going to be any changes with the content, right? Maybe you want to change some of the questions, or you want to change some of the SOP, right? It typically will require a lot of investment to work on all this. So serious gaming is can be very costly. Of course, the experience is very immersive as well, right? And the cost is also very high. Typically, right, the difference between serious gaming and gamification, right, can be seen in the way it is being implemented. Serious gaming tend to have a end of day or end of life kind of experience, right? So when you go through experience A to Z, right, you stop at Z. But gamification can be something that can be very perpetual. So you have seen that in Fitbit, you have seen that in the previous example just now, Duolingo, right? You can keep on going and learning, right? But serious gaming, that's an endpoint most of the time, just like most games as well. Back to you, Prapim.
Yep. So I'll kind of elaborate a little more on that later on, kind of what's the difference between serious gaming and gamification. Okay, so this is a new example. I think Keith's not seen this one before. Okay, so this one's more an offline example. Let's say that you're attending a workshop face-to-face, and then they split you guys into teams, right? And then the more questions you're able to answer correctly, the more points there are on the leaderboard that's on the whiteboard that the facilitator is writing down. So in this case, it's a very offline element. So do you think that's gamification?
Okay, let me launch the second poll.
Yep.
Okay, go.
I actually do not know the answer to this one as well.
Yeah, I also do not know.
Okay.
Everything this is all, actually this is all impromptu. We didn't rehearse any of this before. So
yeah. So
okay.
So board gaming or card-based kind of experiences, right? Maybe in workshops, right? Is it considered gamification? Wow. What game is being shown here anyway, Prapim?
Oh, actually, to be honest, I do not know. I just should use that as an example. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the numbers seem to have stopped. We just take another 5 seconds. It looks quite similar to just now, the results of just now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll share the results so that everybody will know what we're talking about.
Okay, I think it's almost the same as last time. 65% thought yes.
Yeah.
So in this case, I do personally believe that it is gamification. So the reason that I wanted to show this example to you is because I think there's a very common misconception that gamification always has to have an online element, meaning that I always need to have like an app, or I need to go online and log into something on the computer to be using a gamification strategy. But it is actually possible to implement it offline, as simple as, like I said, if you have a workshop and then you divide people into teams, and then you get them to answer according and give points accordingly. And people might be more motivated to, answer, especially whether there's the team element. Yeah.
I'll just add a note that according to Gartner's definition, right? You have all heard of Gartner's hype cycle. Gamification has to have a digital element as well. And so that's according to the Gartner definition. And that's also a definition that I personally also believe in, because otherwise the gamification terminology might be used a bit too loosely. But that said, I agree that some of the best gamification I've seen is actually all offline, right? For example, right? I'm not sure whether are we in the same age group, Jiling, but have you done this like I am a young scientist program back in primary school?
Yes,
right,
you had to collect badges. And
so you have to do different challenges to earn certain points, and when you hit 20 points, you earn the I'm a young biologist badge or I'm a young astronomer badge. That's right. And so you see, how many years has it been? We still remember that. It's because it's so powerful, right? It motivates me and motivates my interest. So that's the offline element, and I would call it gamification as well, right? It is a process to make the process, the element of learning how to be a scientist a lot more fun and interesting.
Okay, so I think that there's this diagram that I found that actually breaks it down a little more clearly in case some of you are still wondering, like, what's the difference between a serious game and gamification. So there's also something on the lower end called gameful design. So I'll just go through that one really quickly. So that one is there's no game elements at all. So it just means that it's just fun to look at. So for example, there's this 404 page that I found where you can like pretend to fire one of the developers. So this one doesn't have any sort of gamification where it just ends here once you click. So that's just gameful design, where it's kind of just fun to look at. So yeah, you can see Uber as well. So it's a really good example of gamification. So one thing that I think to really remember about gamification is it always has a real world purpose. So in the case of Uber rewards, it's for you to, obviously Uber wants you to take more rides with them. In the case of something such as Fitbit, it wants you to become more fit by walking more, getting more active minutes in. And then there's always the game mechanics. So game mechanics in this case means things such as the points, the badges system. There's also like the tier rewards. So you have how in Grab you've got like all the silver, gold, platinum, and then you get more tier rewards for the higher you are. So that's a very important part of gamification as well, kind of the progress and leveling up. Okay, so I've gone back to the medical simulation here. So if it has actual gameplay, as Keith said, that's what serious gaming is. So I think that if you think about it, an easy way to really distinguish it is, does it need like a really development team, like a game development team, and they need to be doing things such as music, cutscenes, and actual gameplay. And if you need that, then that's most likely serious gaming. And if you don't need like a full-fledged development team for the gaming play aspect, then that's more likely to be gamification. Okay, so the last one, obviously, if it doesn't have a real world purpose necessarily, and it's just for fun, that's where it would actually be an actual video game. Okay, so we also have the 4 key pillars of gamification. So we'll be showing some case studies late in the 3rd session, but I think we'll also walk through the 5D framework later on in this session. So you'll start to see kind of where these 4 quadrants fit in. So we always need to have an element of interactivity. So if you think of very good gamification examples, so for example, the one that you saw just now, Uber, there's always something that you can do. You don't just go in and read it, and it's not very one way. You always can interact with it in another, in one way or another. So the other one is constant instant feedback as well. So if you remember the Fitbit example, where it tells you you're very close to, hitting your goal for the day. There's only 500 steps. That's a form of constant instant feedback. So it tells you immediately, how well you're doing and kind of what you need to do to reach the next level. Okay, so the other one is also the competitive and social aspect. So you can see that this is actually our app. We've got the leaderboard here, and it actually shows you like the breakdown of points and where you are. And we've got something called a feed, which actually is akin to Instagram. It shows people, what others are doing in the game. So it shows that you're part of a community, and also shows like what's happening in the game as well. And I think the last one that we definitely can't discount is rewards and redemptions. So it doesn't just mean physical rewards. It also can mean things such as, how many points you earn on the platform and what type of badges you might earn and what you can do with those badges and those points as well. Okay, so we're just going to start into motivation frameworks. Do we have any questions for now, or should we just go straight on?
Let's see, if anybody has any questions, just feel free to shout out, or you can type in the chat. Nobody?
Oh, okay. Right. If none, then we can move straight on. All right. So
sorry, can I just go a little bit quick on the key differences between gamification and games? So there's no right or wrong answer end of the day, right? And it can be very subjective, but gamification generally means it's a process-driven approach, And typically is being brought about when a certain problem statement needs to be solved. And we will get into that a little bit more further just later on. End of the day, I think it's not so important to understand what's the exact definition, right? It's more important to know what are you exactly trying to achieve. So many times we have seen like people coming to us and say that they want to create Angry Birds for compliance training, or a kind of Candy Crush for safety training, right? And to me, the objective over here is more entertainment, right? So that definitely feels more like a game. But gamification typically does not really worry itself with the purpose of entertainment, right? It is more interested in the element of behavioral conditioning and habits building. All right, back to you, Prapim.
Okay, so we're just going to touch on motivation frameworks very briefly, just so that we can give a bit of context on why we believe that gamification is so important to be utilizing for a lot of strategies. So these are just some use cases that we've seen and where we believe that gamification can work. So I believe that a lot of you have like different use cases that fit into here. So I think that most of you have already shared in the chat like what you guys are here for today, but I guess I also want to do a poll here just for a more detailed breakdown of what everyone is here for. Yes, I think we can launch the poll. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to gamify?
Whoa. Wow, very interesting results.
So typically we when we run such a workshop, I think the mass majority usually comes because they are interested to do gamification for L&D. But we have also run workshops for gamification for consumer engagement. And actually, end of the day, right, one of the things that we realize is it doesn't matter who the audience is, right? Whether or not it's a customer or whether or not it's an employee, right? They're all humans, right? And all humans have certain psychology, motivation frameworks. So glad to share that whatever we are going to share over here, it can be applicable possibly to your customers, to your channel partners who are doing reselling. It could be applicable to your employees, or they could even be applicable to your kids at home as well, right? You can gamify behaviors, getting them to do house chores like my partner did. He actually created a game for that.
That would be useful. All right. Oh, okay. Let's see the numbers.
Somebody says all of the above. Yeah, you should have all of the above. I think that's the golden rule of all assessments. You need to have all of the above.
All right. Maybe noted. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, here you go.
Okay, it looks like a pretty clear winner in learning and development. But as Keith said, a lot of these gamification is use case agnostic in the sense that you can use it for a wide variety of use cases, just as long as I think the important thing is to understand your target audience. Okay, so this is a neurotransmitter. So I usually like to do this as a pop quiz. So our audience here is Jiling in this case. So this is something that is a neurotransmitter in the brain that drives motivation. So do you have any idea what this is?
Yeah, if anyone knows, just type it in the chat room, and we cannot guarantee you a prize. We may consider that.
Type in the chat what you think this is. People good in chemistry.
Okay, so
in neurons, that's a good guess.
Yep, time to tap on your chemistry knowledge.
Whoa.
Okay. So we have some correct answers coming up already.
All right.
Very good.
So I guess, yep.
Wow.
Yep. So dopamine.
So the first person to actually type dopamine, I believe, was Jess. Even though it was not spelled exactly correctly, maybe she was too anxious to type it out.
too excited.
Yes.
Congrats.
So Jess, congratulations, Jess. Right, you have won a bragging right to say that you're the first to get this correct. Also, right, that's the exact moment of dopamine rush to your head when you got it correct as well. That's exactly what we are trying to trigger.
Yeah, so I think that that's kind of what we want to try to trigger in gamification. So just for context, this is a photo that this photographer took when people were playing video games. So I think that as you guys are, and trying to play more games with your friends, especially during this period, some of you, I've been playing a lot of like drawing games myself, like Scribble, and then a lot of the competitive element is trying to get the to the right answer first of what the other person is drawing, and then like I always feel like if I'm playing with my friends, you can feel your heartbeat increases, you're getting very excited, and you're starting to mistype and misspell. So similar to maybe what happened just now. So that's kind of feeling that we also want to kind of foster in people when they're doing the gamification strategy, that kind of excitement and dopamine rush per se. Okay, so what I talked about just now with that kind of feeling of excitement actually correlates with your dopamine activity. So this is just some kind of signs for you. So there's the baseline cue in the reward section, and then there's also the unexpected, expected, and negative prediction error. So I think that this is not just for reward in this case doesn't just mean like, monetary rewards. It's also, being rewarded for an interaction. So for example, even for me, if I'm having conversation with my friend and I tell a joke and then it's a successful joke, that actually counts as, a positive reward in this case. And then that's where my dopamine activity really spikes. So one place that this research source you can see in this screen here, they found that dopamine activity really spikes, especially is positive social interactions. So things such as, like I said, making a joke, your friend laughs, or going on Instagram and people are liking your posts. So actually Instagram is another very good example of gamification, which you might not necessarily think it's gamification. It's got the activity feed, the social element. If you want to think about it, there's also that form of competition if you in the number of likes, and then there's also kind of the reward that you get for people liking your posts and engaging with you via the chat and the messages. Okay, so that's why it's quite important to make sure that you're doing this at the right time, because another one is negative prediction, meaning that if people, you don't give them the reward at the right time, people actually get demotivated. They're not going to do what you want next time because they know that they're not going to get like what the reward for it. Okay, so I think this is where we're going to move into a few more frameworks. So the reason why we always want to make sure that we motivate our target audience is because let's say this is a employee engagement example for work, but it also is because you want them to be doing certain things. That's where the target behaviors come in as well. Okay, so I'll just move on to some rewards as well, reward motivation types. So there's a difference between extrinsic, which is this one here, and intrinsic in the next slide. So extrinsic means that they're being driven by external rewards, so money, grades, praise. So another thing I like to distinguish here is that extrinsic doesn't just mean it's like physical, and you can hold it. It could be something such as your boss praising you or your boss reprimanding you. So it can actually be a positive and negative thing. And then the next one is intrinsic. So intrinsic is something that's self-driven. So if we give an example, it's like my boss is telling me to read a book, right? And then it's the intrinsic motivation is I actually like reading. I want to read it for my own self-knowledge. But there's also the added bonus that if I read it and I finish it, my boss will give me $100. That's the extrinsic reward. He'll praise me as well. So actually, none of them are necessarily better than the other. It's good to have a mix of both, as long as, of course, you know your target audience properly and you're not like giving them too much of the wrong type of extrinsic that's wrong type of rewards. Okay, so I think I'll also just touch on this quite quickly. So Maslow's hierarchy. So I think that most of you guys know these ones here, physiological. So most of us are, I think, stuck at this stage right now as we're all at home. But I would hope that a lot of you are also able to achieve esteem and self-actualization at work. So that's where the real intrinsic motivation comes in, because you know that at work or at learning, you're able to really feel a sense of confidence and achievement in your actions. Oh, okay. All right. Keith, do you want to talk about this a bit more, or shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
So this is a Herzberg two-factor theory. I think it's a very well-known motivation framework for employees engagement in the HR world. And but the gist of this is saying that actually extrinsic motivation, right, can actually be a demotivating factor sometimes, right? For example, right, I remember there was this Freakonomics case study about blood donation by Red Cross. So what happened was actually Red Cross started actually paying donors for the blood donation, and actually blood donation count went down. It actually decreases, right? And there was also another example of how possibly a childcare center, when they introduce a penalty for parents who pick up their kids late, right, after hours, the amount of parents that's picking up their kids late has actually increased when they know that they can pay their way out as well. So that's why extrinsic motivations, right, has to be given in a very careful manner. But I agree absolutely that it has its value as well, right? Sometimes, right, without giving away the free iPad, it's just impossible to, we see that a lot in the adult learning side of things, right? Like my mom, she actually signed up for English course because she was getting a free tablet, which she's not using right now. The fact of the matter is she's actually learning something, right? So extrinsic motivation is not a bad thing at all. We just have to balance it carefully.
Yeah. So in my own experience, I think that something like extrinsic motivation is quite good for onboarding users, but you can't keep them forever with extrinsic. So one of our clients, for example, she was having problems getting people to come onto her learning platform. So what she actually did was she set 1,000 points just for signing up, and then they could use these 1,000 points on another platform to redeem their company rewards. And then actually a lot of people signed up. And then based on, some people actually went into the portal to see the content. They were like, oh, this is actually not bad. So then while there's still some dropout, she was able to get, some people on board in the first place. So yeah, so that's an example of, extrinsic isn't bad. You just need to have a balance of both types. Okay, so this is usually just for context in our face-to-face workshop where we have a pop quiz to ask people how to pronounce his name. But,
we can test Tilly.
Yeah.
Oh, I got, okay. His name, right? Like first name, Nihali. All right, I did it.
Well, okay. Oh, you win. Right. Well done. So the full name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, right? I was lucky to know about this because I had a Hungarian friend. So Csikszentmihalyi is a Hungarian psychologist, right? He wrote a book called Flow Theory. I strongly recommend everyone to get it. It's available in the Audible app store, right? It's you have about, I think, a free trial, right? You can download this book. I would highly recommend it. And he talks a lot about how he did years of research trying to understand how does one motivate someone else, right? And so he came up with this flow theory. Prapim, can you go to the next slide? Right. So he came up with also this framework where one of the key elements of ensuring that people are in the flow, right? So you can be in the flow when, for example, you are doing sports or when you're doing art, depending on what you really like and what you really are good at. At the end of the day, right, this flow that you see over here, let me try to do the annotation as well. Right here. Okay. So this channel that you see over here, right, it really is negotiated by how difficult the challenge is and your capability to do with it as well. So in order to be in a flow, right, you make sure that this is equivalent. Now, if something is too difficult to do, right, and your skill sets are not there, it creates anxiety. And likewise, right, eventually you get to the bottom stage as well, right? If the skill is too high and the challenge is way too easy. So right now in this session, we're trying to negotiate this balance over here for all of you. But we want to be able to, the reason why we talk about flow theory a lot is because Csikszentmihalyi came up with 3 key principles to ensuring how do you keep someone in the flow mode, right? So we see that a lot in Gametize, especially our developers, our programmers, right? When they're doing their coding, please do not go anywhere near them, right? Do not touch them, do not talk to them. They might bite you, right? And the reason is because they are very, very much in the zone, right? When they're in the zone, right, they cannot hear anything else. They're completely motivated. And one of the reasons, right, Csikszentmihalyi has found out that kept people motivated is, first and foremost, they know that there's a clear set of goals and they get a lot of progress, right? They're able to progress, they're able to get better at what they're doing. That's one of the key principles. And the other second principle is that there must be clear and immediate feedback, right? Every time they do something, they get told whether are they doing it well or they are not doing it very well. And again, you see that happen a lot in gaming and in games as well, right? I hope all of you had a chance to play Pokemon Go at one point in time, right? Pokemon Go is a great example of gamification and also a game for me, right? It is gamification because it has helped my mom lose about 5 kg within 2 months, right? It is a game because it's also entertaining. And because the company did not intend to create the game to help people lose weight, right? They created the game to help people have fun, entertainment in the real world. But one of the things you see in Pokemon Go is that they have a clear set of goals and progress, and they also will let you capture all the Pokemons really quickly, right? In fact, right at the start of the game, you are able to capture your first Pokemon within 10 seconds. And the moment you capture the Pokemon, you get level up immediately, right? You go up to level 2. So that is the clear, immediate feedback. And the next slide, right, is actually the more important one, right? So he talks about what actually truly motivates us. Do we have a poll here, Prapim?
No, I didn't set one here.
Okay, they can try the annotation function, right? So, Tina, maybe you can explain how that works for the audience.
So everybody, if you mouse over the view options and then press on it, there's a drop down. So you can see this option called annotate.
Yep. Yeah. So just draw. So
you can
just put a tick.
Whether you want to choose pleasure or enjoyment. Yeah, put a tick, circle.
Okay. Let's see how many people are
putting heart shapes as well. I didn't know that you could do that.
Yeah, you can stamp a heart shape. Star.
I'm going to stamp a.
Oh,
all right. Okay.
Nice. Someone, Fires is from our team, actually. Someone wrote both.
Both, all right. Nice.
Okay, at least the answers is not, it depends. All right.
I think we have 50,
all right, I hope everyone is having enough fun. Right, this is the first time I'm seeing someone actually do this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think the answer seems to be rather even out, right? A lot of people think it's pleasure, a lot of people think it's enjoyment, right? Well, according to Csikszentmihalyi, Tiling, what would be your answer?
Let me see. Can I ask Google?
You have 5 seconds to do that if you want to.
Enjoyment.
Enjoyment. Why do you think enjoyment motivates you?
Well, you need to be able to get in the flow, to be able to to get the intrinsic motivation. Yeah, I mean, I've been listening, paying attention, so.
Great. So let's move to the next slide.
Ooh.
The drawings are still there. We need to clear the drawings. Okay. All right. So the answer is enjoyment, right? According to Csikszentmihalyi, why enjoyment? Enjoyment is the kind of feeling, the kind of sensation that you get when you feel like you're growing and getting better at something. Pleasure is typically what keeps us alive, right? You get pleasure or you have when you eat something when you're hungry, when you drink something when you're thirsty, right? And when you are addicted to something and when you have it, right, you get pleasure as well, right? But truly, you can only use the word enjoyment in a situation when you're enjoying playing the piano, right? Or you're enjoying doing a drawing, you're enjoying doing your coding, because you feel like you're getting better at something. And when you feel that you're growing and getting better at something, that is what truly motivates us. And this is according to Csikszentmihalyi, so do not quote me to that, right? This is according to all his book and in his materials. So I thought, of course, pleasure, you can get it through any other ways as well to keep humanity alive, right? So you get my drift here, but enjoyment typically deals with the intrinsic motivation. If you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, it's right at the top. Yeah. Back to you, Prapim.
All right. Okay, so we're just going to talk a little bit more about all these frameworks as well. So another one that I'd like to share with you is something called the SAPS framework. So that stands for success or status, access, power, stuff. So what this was originally devised for was for your advocates, people who might be using your technology or your software, your product, and what motivates them to be advocates. But I think that this can be I'll use for any use cases. So, what causes employees to be advocates for your organization, for example. So you can see that as you, okay, I'm going to try the annotation too. Okay. Okay, I'm not having much luck. All right, so you can see that at the bottom is stuff. So there at the bottom, that's where most people would be at, and only a few can reach the top because only a few are actually that motivated and are willing to work to reach the top. So stuff obviously just means things like swag, Gametize t-shirts. A lot of our clients like to use like branded coffee cups, branded stationery, etc. So that usually is like kind of the low tier, so it's still valuable, but most people will just do kind of the bare minimum to get stuff. So the next part is power. So what power is the sense that your employees, your target audience, your consumers are feeling the sense that they can actually have a say in what to do. So one good example is I think some place like Zendesk, customer support, where you have a certain bug and then you actually write in to tell them about the bug, and they say, and a customer representative might tell you like, oh, that's a good idea, we're going to implement it, and you actually see the implementation in the next feature update. So that's a very good example of power. You really feel that you're able to contribute in some way to the organization. So the last one is, sorry, not last one, the next one is access. So access is something like, access to a meeting between the higher ups that you might not be able to attend otherwise. Or let's say if it's consumer engagement, you get invited to a talk where they launch the next product. So a very good example is League of Legends, where they actually have a partner program for people who are creating content for the game, but they're not actually part of the company itself. So what happens is that if people are, very successfully creating a lot of content advocating for the game, then they actually can get access to the next event where the game developers themselves are actually announcing like, oh, these are the new updates. You get to see them before everybody else. So it's a kind of exclusive feeling that they get, that they know that a lot of people cannot actually have.
It could be like, for example, a private lunch with Prapim as well, right? That's access as well.
Yeah. So I think that one thing that Keith likes to use here is, let's say, for example, you're a really huge fan of, is it Alibaba? Jack Ma, right?
Jack Ma, yeah.
So, or let's say I get to talk to Mark Zuckerberg for one day for an hour lunch and ask him all about Facebook and how it works. So I think that one is a very good example of something that I would like to try to have. Okay, so the last one is success or status. So this one is a lot smaller. You can see, I think not everybody will want to have this. It might be something as such as, for example, getting recognition, whether it's in the newsletter or maybe, you're the president of the club. So I think Xiaomi has a very good example. Is it Xiaomi? I can't remember, where they actually have ambassadors of the Xiaomi brand, but they're not actually, a Xiaomi employee themselves. So these are the people who are, successfully appointed as presidents of the club, and they're able to kind of moderate the club or other members of the Xiaomi club. And then they talk about the product. They actually get product updates directly from Xiaomi themselves that they can share with others. So that one is an ultimate form of success.
Yeah, I would like to talk about how they gamified their portal and forum as well. So if you're familiar with Stack Overflow, right, it's actually a coders-only community. People will ask questions, and people answer the questions, they will get certain points, and the points will allow them to level up. And Xiaomi actually cleverly implemented a very similar approach to their portal as well. And it works so well that they don't even need the customer service officers to react to troubleshooting, right? The customers became the customer service officers, right? They're getting recognized whenever they give certain kind of solutions. And I thought that was very clever, extremely clever.
Yeah, so I think the other clever thing, which you guys might notice as well, is that actually the further it gets to the top, sometimes it costs actually even less money for the organization to implement. And so it's like free marketing for them. People are, talking about the Xiaomi brand, advocating for it, and then actually they don't have to even pay these advocates, and they also don't even have to like crank out the merchandise that would be at the bottom of stuff. So I think if it's a successful SAPS program, actually it's very powerful. Okay, so yeah, you have a different mix of reward types, so you can motivate for different purposes. So depending on your target audience, it's good to know like what they're motivated by, and then kind of just tier your reward structure accordingly. So I think that actually this is also kind of a poll. So what we like to ask people is, whether it's yourself or it's your target audience that you're thinking about today, what's some type of rewards that you can recommend that money can't buy? So it can't be things like, oh, I would give them a mug, or I would give them a free voucher for a flight ticket. It has to be something that's money can't buy, that would really motivate them. So
so please feel free to just type out, right, whatever ideas you can think of. What kind of rewards that money can't buy, can actually reward people with. And this is actually one of our favorite exercises, right? One of the things that I always like to recommend to my clients is to actually recommend a lunch with the CEO, but somehow nobody ever found that rewarding at all. I don't know why, right? Maybe most people would think that it's more like a punishment. So this I think just feel free to think of this as well, right? Because you yeah,
or you can share in the chat if you like.
Yep.
So we do for another 30 seconds and we can move on.
Unlimited skills future funding.
All right, that one money can't buy, I'm sure, but
lifetime membership, funding. Yeah,
free space. Free space in iLab, in lab.
In lab. Not during this period, but yeah, we can do it when we reopen.
In lab to
yeah, the word free, everybody loves it. Right?
in lab to feature my content. You cannot pay in lab to feature content. You have to earn it.
All right. Yes, of course. Training and development, best practices.
Okay, so someone said in lab to feature my course. I think that's a really good one, actually. So yeah, that's one example.
That's actually from me, Prapim.
That okay. Anyway, so yeah, free overseas study trip. Okay, I would say that one still kind of falls under stuff, but another one might be, for example, an example I can think of off the top of my head. One of our clients actually did a reward structure. So the very first tier was just normal swag, like hoodies, sports drink bottles, etc. But then the ultimate winner actually won an all expenses paid trip to the HQ. So the HQ was in Japan. And so that was the stuff part, but then they also actually got to be brought to the HQ, and the CEO of the company actually brought them around the HQ and kind of gave them an exclusive tour. So that one definitely you can't buy. So that one's access. Yep, okay. So I think we can finish off.
Featured guest in
the screen.
Okay, who wrote my colleagues must attend my HIT course?
Wow.
That's me.
Okay, that's also key. Yeah, that's definitely a punishment.
Private island.
Yeah. Okay,
to buy
so
an
for
item.
example, May wrote recognition honor badge. That's a good one as well. And Sabah Hashim wrote featured guest in a podcast. So I think there's some pretty good examples here.
Yeah,
of the
we're going to
SATS.
talk about how can we determine what kind of rewards that you can actually roll out in your L&D later on based on profiling. Okay, Prapim, we move on.
Okay, let me clear the drawings.
Okay, so we're going to have another pop quiz soon, but before we do that, so why do we choose video games or gaming to base motivation off of? So the reason is because they're very addictive, and it's one of the only industries, or maybe the only industry, that actually has mastered user experience. So I think that most people here probably have played a game of some sort, even if you think that you're not a gamer. So I'm sure if I looked at your phone right now, I could find at least one game that you were, and maybe one that you were very addicted to as well. That you do, like, you spend at least 10 minutes a day playing on. So I think that that's why we really want to emulate that, because we feel that it's very successful. Okay, so we actually have a pop quiz as well. So what's the average age of a video gamer in the US in 2019?
Launch. Okay.
All right, so we got some age ranges. If you are feeling very gung-ho and you think that you know the exact age, you actually can write it in the group chat, or so you can ping in the chat as well if you want to take a guess as to the exact age.
Jiding, what games are you playing right now during this circuit breaker?
Sadly, I was a few weeks back, I was trying out Monopoly. I found it on the App Store. So, no, wait, sorry, not Monopoly, Uno. The card
Uno.
game, Uno, yeah. It's quite fun.
It's a very good game. Very good game.
There were, I think, real players all over the world, so it was pretty fun. And then I think you can chat virtually, and you can throw rotten eggs. And there's a partnership thing. So if your partner doesn't do well, you can throw rotten eggs at the partner. So it was really fun.
Okay, you're definitely a killer and socializer of player type analysis. We'll talk about that later.
Sure. That's the game.
Okay, the trap has spoken.
Okay.
Okay,
I guess we can
so
end the poll.
we can end the poll and share the results.
Okay, so most people think it's between 19 and 30. Got a few who are 18 below. Okay, there's one person in the lone 46 to 60 category. Okay, so any last call for exact age? If not, we'll just let you know. Yep. All right, so as of 2019, oops, let me just go back. So you can see here, this is just in the US though. I don't actually have the statistics for worldwide. So yeah, you can see that it's 46% of gamer. Okay, before that, that would be average age for women is 34. Average for men is 32. So actually it's 33. I actually believe that it's dropped year on year. It used to be a bit higher. I think one year when I first started Gametize and I learned it was 35, but now it's 33. So the reason that we like to kind of show this is kind of just to debunk any conceptual impressions that you might have on what the age of a gamer may be as well, because a lot of people still believe that it's very young, but actually most of it is kind of the young workforce age. Yeah.
The other conception is that only males are video gamers, right? And that's actually not true as well, right? As you can see over here, in fact, if I'm not wrong, there are actually more female gamers over the age of 30 than male gamers, right?
Yep.
And another interesting fact we have found, and I think someone in the audience actually thinks the average age of gamers is over 60, right? So I can understand why you choose that. It might be because you have a mom like me, right, who's an obsessive, compulsive gamer, right? So I used to be the compulsive one. Times have changed. My mom, today, she has been playing like 5 hours of Rumi Cup a day, right, since the circuit breaker has started. Before that, she was Candy Crusher, level 200 plus. Pokemon, I have no idea where she. She really likes the idea of getting entertained by very simple to play games, right? And she's over 60. So there's really nobody's really too young or too old to experience gamification in your company.
Okay, so if you want to as well, you can go to the report here. So it's very US centric, but it gives a good breakdown of like, not only the age and demographics, but where they're playing. So one interesting thing about the report is you realize that most people actually like to play in a social circle as well. It's people who don't actually, a very rare amount of people actually play by themselves. Okay, so I think that this is the part where you can just temporarily go to the platform. So what we're going to do is actually, we're just going to show you a little bit of what the Gametize platform looks like. So, okay, so you can see here that, okay, can everyone see my screen actually before I?
Yep.
All right, okay. Okay, so I encourage you guys to download the Gametize app later on after this session, just so you guys can try it for yourselves. So we also have a free trial for 7 days. So you guys can kind of play around with that. If you want the next session in 2 weeks time, we're going to go into this dashboard in way more detail. But you can see here that actually, one thing I really want to show you guys as well is something called templates.
So I just want to add that even after the free trial, right, even if you do not continue the subscription, right, it will revert to the free plan. And just a little bit of a reward. If you stay till the end of this very long presentation, right, we are going to allow you to extend with complimentary access to our platform, right, but only if you stay on to the end.
Okay, so you can actually choose from a range of templates that we have here. So for example,
Prapim, we are not showing, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, okay, sorry. Give me a minute. All right, can you guys see my screen again?
Yep.
All right, great. Okay, so you can see here, there's a series of templates you guys can use. You can explore that in your own time. We've curated it based on kind of common use cases that we see in a lot of our clients, and pulled that right into our platform, asking like, do you have a template for this particular purpose? So I'll just show you the template that I've done recently for the work from home game. So I think that this one's more relevant now than ever. So the idea of the work from home game is actually to kind of engage people to be doing these activities every day while they're working from home. So it's not just teaching people, what's the best practices for working from home, but also like get them to do these every day and get more points. Okay, so you can see here that if I share my project, I get the work from home wingman. And then this is the player side. So I can actually type this in and then it will go straight to my game here. Okay, so you can see this is the player side. This is what your players will see, and then you as the admin can see all of these types. So it's actually quite easy to do this. So that's why I said gamification in my idea. You don't need like game developers to do it. Oh, sorry, someone said something? Okay. Okay, so I'll just show you very briefly the structure of this particular game. So the idea that the narrative that we've created here is kind of just the, you're the pilot in the kind of in the captain seat, and then you're able to do the pre-flight check, make sure that you've got everything before you start, and then.
Prapim, could you just minimize the sidebar on the left-hand side?
Oh, right. Yep. All right. So here, you can see here, this is the pre-flight check.
So just to help the audience stay focused, on the left-hand side is actually our dashboard, right? It's the project manager where administrators are able to create content. On the right-hand side is the player's view, right? So when you are creating content on the left-hand side, right, you're actually able to customize the template games, or you can build from scratch from nothing at all. So actually, we are going to give a more fuller workshop. I think it's going to be about 1.5 hours, right? But today we're just giving a preview, so you can get started right away.
Yeah, so I'll just show very quick how the type of things that we can do on the platform. So you can see here that this is the same challenge, but for the player side is here. So what I wanted people to do for this particular challenge is to set up their workspace. So once they finish setting up the workspace, they can actually take a photo of the desk and then they'll get points for it. So actually, before that, I want them to do their stretches for the day. So I've actually embedded a video. So I get them to share the routine and do the routine, or if they don't want to do this particular one, they would share something in the comments below. So you can see that my colleague Gerald said that he can't even stretch because he ends up having a sprained back. So that's just an example, very briefly, of an activity feed.
And probably you could show what kind of challenges our authors can create.
Okay, so here are the type of challenges that you guys can create on the Gametize platform. So it's very essential type of interactions, photo challenges, things where you can upload a photo and then get points for that, upload a video, polls. We also have the standard quizzes and then standard challenges as well. So standard is just free text entry, which I like to use a lot for people to share their insights or their opinions on certain things. And then we even have the QR code challenge as well. So that one, we like to use it especially for kind of check-in challenges. So you print or you send over the QR code to someone else to scan and they'll get points for it. Okay.
So I think I want to talk about a particular feature, right? Actually, I can do the screen sharing on my end.
Yep. So I think you can actually stop mine.
Yeah, I hope the audience can see the screen.
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things that we actually do have in our back end is the ability to embed third-party content as well. So I believe Lynn just now mentioned that there will be a project, there will be a presentation about Pair Deck, right? So I believe that is a web-based presentation too. So we do have ways for people to potentially embed third-party content into our platform as well. They can just do an iframe embedding. As you can see, our experience is mobile responsive. So if you put it in the white screen, right, this is how it looks like. And the other thing I want to talk about is we also do embedding with a solution called H5P, right? So I think some of you might be familiar with this. We actually are a paying customer for H5P, right? We pay something like $45 a month for three authors license because we were one of the early adopters. And I think what they do have is they have a lot of rich content platforms, right? That allows us to do a lot of interesting mix and match kind of games, right? And so this can be embedded quite easily over here, right? In fact, the other thing that we embedded is a virtual tour. So I quite like this as well. So this is in fact our office in Gametize, which nobody is in right now, right? So I do come to this widget every now and then to remember how my office looks like. And it's a really powerful tool, right? You can see, you can do like, where am I? Play area, pantry, this is a play area, and I'll get points for that. And so this can easily be embedded in our platform. I've asked for this time to do some quick demos on what are some of the projects that we have, but I recommend everyone to check out this particular website. I'm going to, Prapim, could you help me type out cheatsheet.gametize.com in the chat room? Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So we call this cheat sheet because to me, there's really no point in trying to be overly innovative and creative sometimes when you try to do gamification campaigns, right? I would rather recommend that you steal ideas from what is already out there. That's why we have the templates, right? And if you don't like the templates, right, you could see some of our existing projects that's out there, right? So you can feel free to steal the ideas, feel free to get inspired over here. That's another term for stealing ideas. And you could actually borrow some of them and implement in your own project at a record time. So I think Prapim, your work from home game probably took about 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that includes all the time that she has taken to do the content, think about the content. And I'm going to show some of my favorite games over here, right? We have games for grammar, games for learning English. We have medical screening declarations. Even we gamified the process of COVID-19 declaration before we got into circuit breaker. We had the code of conduct demo as well. Now, this right-hand side screen is a particular project that my colleague, aka my co-founder, Damon, right? He created this game for his kids, right? And this is actually a game about kids adventure. It's a very simple game, right? Damon is our CTO in terms of creativity. And don't tell, you might say that, right? I don't think he's the sharpest tool, right? But he was able to use our platform, right? He was able to create a very simple game, right? And this very simple game is you actually have to catch a EV by doing homework and review for at least 1 hour a day. So this is for all the parents, right? You might want to use our template here, right? Let me know, right? I'm happy to sponsor this. And when you do all these games, right, you're actually able to earn points that allows you to eventually redeem something on the reward store. Let's see what's on the reward store here. You get to earn a $5 voucher that your mom and dad has to approve, right? You get to have a free water bottle and a free pencil case, right? And I think at one point of time, he actually introduced a reward to spend to allow you 1 hour of playtime on the iPad. So these are the kind of things that they have actually gamified over here. Now, the other example that I really like to showcase, go to gametize.com, go to the featured games. Now, in the featured games, you can see that we have also a lot of examples. We have a game about cybersecurity. Elephant is actually a science game, right? To learn about science. We have a game for learning grammar. I even did a commemorative game for the Trump Team Summit back in 2018, I think. Now, the game that I really like the most, actually, right? I always talk about all the time, it's called the Charisma game, right? So the reason why I like this game is it's a game that is based on a book called Charisma, right? It's by an author called Eric Feng, right? I think some of you in the industry might know him in the circuit. He's a very outstanding young gentleman who's of my age as well, right? And he created a game on our platform to get people to be charismatic with reading his book at all. So all you have to do is to actually do the challenges. And some of the challenges here includes things like someone today, make someone smile today. So a lot of soft skills training. And when I come into this particular challenge, right, I can take a photo, upload a photo, I can look at newsfeed to see what other people are doing. I could vote on them. So when I vote on this submission, right, later on this guy will get an additional 1 point. So there's a very social element. And of course, if I really like this particular photo, right, I'm going to vote on this person. I'm going to say, great, I love this shot. Now, as I'm doing all these challenges here, right, I will be able to unlock a badge later on, right? And this is a badge that I have to unlock. It's called the relationship key. And when I unlock all the keys here, I'm truly charismatic already, which I'm working on my way right now. The one thing I really like about this particular game is that there's very minimum reading involved, right? So I can just do the challenge. Right? I'm going to praise stealing is fantastic and awesome.
Thank you.
And right away, you see that I earned 10 points over here, right? And I am also able to see that there's a feedback. So this is a feedback where it will let me learn something about this particular challenge I did. Do you know that it takes 7 positive compliments to neutralize a single negative feedback? This is according to Lozada and Hippie, it's a research. And so compliment the people around more. You see, there's a positive reinforcement behavior that you can encourage over here through this very simple automation as well, right? So after I did this challenge, right, I might be able to come back here again and do it like 1 hour later, right? Rather, I want to move on to the next challenge, right? Do whatever it takes to make someone smile and tell us how you did it. So again, this is one of my favorite showcase because it's so simple, right? And the best part about this is you're able to learn something without knowing that you're learning something, right? I think that's the best kind of learning experience. Yeah, you don't even realize you're learning. It happens all so naturally. As you can see here, right? I put out some bogus rewards here, right? So don't bother to redeem them, expecting them to fall through because I don't think Eric is going to fulfill it. But just put out some demos over here. A chance to win 5-minute Skype call with Eric Feng, right? So I can redeem this and see that do you want to redeem this for 1,000 points? And if I will be informed that I have insufficient points. So that's where I will actually be encouraged to go back and do more challenges. So again, this is where the extrinsic motivation happens, right? If I'm looking for something intrinsic, right, I would be looking a lot at the leaderboard and to see where I fall in. there could be a team element as well. So team competitions are very powerful. I strongly recommend that to be implemented for all your gamification projects when everyone learns together as a group and competes together as a group. Of course, there's a chance to win the Gametize t-shirt. It's just a chance. So this one I can fulfill for sure. You can do redeem this reward. All right. So this is just two of my favorite examples to showcase. But of course, we have more examples that you can see in our cheat sheet, right? We have one for sales training. We have one for learning about legal, right? In the next half an hour or so, we are going to share some of the best principles to encourage gamification success. Back to you, Prapim.
All right, so I saw some questions are in the chat about the platform. So I think that we'll just address those very quickly before we move on to the next section. So Kenny asked whether it's web-based or app-based. So it's actually both. You can play on app and on the web, as you saw just now. Okay.
And the question about integrated into enterprise LMS, the answer is yes. So in fact, we have been used by some companies to actually drive adoption of their LMS, right? So it sits on top as a layer, right? I want you to fulfill this module and this course in the Saba system. And when you complete that over there, you earn 20 points over here. So a lot of times gamification is a combination of a lot of different best practices you can see out there. And one of the best practices that we've seen is making it feel more like a storyline, making it feel more like a digital passport, or even a virtual body guiding you what to do, right? And so that users just need to stay focused on your own experience over here, right? They do not need to worry about remembering where all the other bits and parts of the solution is, right? They do not need to remember where the Saba link is. They just need to come to this particular experience and it's all consolidated over here.
Okay. All right, I'm sharing my screen again. So let me know if you guys can't see it.
So there's another question from Laura before Kenny's question, asking about how is the system able to determine whether users really do the challenges properly?
Fantastic question, Laura. We don't have that kind of AI to determine whether you're really doing yoga, right? If you're doing something else. However, right, that's the element of a crowdsourcing, right? So you could give 0 points upfront and allow the person to earn points only when people vote on their answers. Kind of like an Instagram, right? This is not a legit Instagram post unless people like your post. So we can implement the same concept in Gametize. Now, the other thing is there's of course a reporting function. So the crowd can report a particular invalid submission. And the third element is just allow them to cheat, right? Allow them to earn the points. At the end of the day, as long as your objective is being met, that is more important. So it's an honor-based system that we always recommend all the time. But of course, there are some challenges like quizzes or QR code or fill in the blank or passcode challenge, right? You can only get these like codes when you attend a webinar over here, right? And we are going to give you the code later on. So that's one way to do validation. No, you do not need all activities to go through the moderator, right? It can be multiple moderators. It can be your crowd, your fellow players in the game as well.
All right, so I guess in the interest of time, we'll probably leave. If you have any other questions of the platform, please feel free to ask them regardless. We'll answer them towards the end when we do the Q&A. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on now to the 5D framework. So just a little bit of context on what this framework actually is before we go into all 5 steps of what the 5D framework itself. So this is something that we've devised based on our experience conducting a lot of these workshops and also a lot of sessions with our clients. So we always walk into the gamification games. We like to call it a game storming session on our side. We always like to walk into those sessions with this framework so that our clients can at least do this before we sit down with them and actually go through it step by step. So I'll just do this one step by step, and then we'll see the use cases we've applied the 5D framework to. I won't really get into the case studies today, but I'll be using, I think Keith knows this one as well because he worked on it. It was before my time. So we did something called the Joyful Journey case study, which is actually some talent acquisition problem use case from the Management Associate program. So the first thing that you always do, of course, is to define your problem. So, you know, as Keith mentioned, sometimes clients might just come to us and ask us, like, can you do an Angry Birds, or can you develop a certain type of game for us? And then we actually ask them what's their use case, and they said, oh, I just want to engage my employees, to let them have more fun. So that actually is a really bad problem statement because it's not getting into the crux of what the actual issue is. So of course, you have to try to be as specific as possible. Why do you want to engage them? What do you want to do in the first place? So a very good example for is this one here. So in the case of DBS, their talent acquisition team was actually really small. I think it was only 2 people, despite the fact that, you know, it's a management associate program. So they identified that, you know, it's resource intensive and it's really costly. In addition, they also realized the assessment process isn't standardized, because what was happening was that candidates were coming into the interview center and they were being interviewed by people who had different ideas of, you know, what's a good candidate and what's not. So they wanted to at least have something that's more standardized so that it's not really heavily dependent on the interviewers' biases themselves. So one very good way to define your problem is kind of to do the kind of a fishbone diagram. So it means that you know, you identify the root problem and then what's causing those problems.
Just to step in real quick. So the problem statement is the most important steps, because you should not be doing gamification without such a outline at the start, right? Otherwise, you will not be understanding exactly what you're trying to solve. So the other problem statements that we see a lot in the L&D industry or domain is the learners are unable to absorb a huge amount of information, right? Just based on presentation slides. The other statement that we get a lot is retention, right? So I think the industry benchmark is about 30% for retention. So I think that's going to be the amount of information you can retain at the end of these 2 hours as well. And that's where gamification comes in really helpful. I remember there was another use case where the workshop instructors wants the audience to prepare even before the workshop itself, right? So again, that's where gamification can come in to make the process a lot more seamless and flowing.
All right, so yep, define your problem and then determine your goals. So what's the outcome that you want to achieve? So in the case of our use case here with Joyful Journey, they wanted to cut down the time needed to review candidates, let's say by 50%. So it's always good to have like a metric just as a baseline, some number or figure of some sort. And they also wanted to standardize the assessment process. So their idea was that, you know, they can cut the amount of candidates that make it to the interview round before they even like you look at their application. Okay, so the third one is to decide your target behaviors. So you need to think from the point of view of your target audience. So what's your target behaviors and emotions that you want your target audience to feel? So what we always like to do is that, you know, you think of in the point of view of your target audience. In this case, it's the management associates who are applying for a job in your in the bank, and you want them to think. What do you want them to think? So in this case, things such as, wow, this company would be really great to work for, or they've really spent a lot of time really curating this talent acquisition process, and I can actually spend more time on the quality of my answers rather than, you know, actually filling in all of the fields for applications.
Mm-hmm. I also want to add that this process can be facilitated by gathering your focus group as well, right? Ask the users, what do they want to see? What do they want to feel? Challenge them to come up with statements rather than just saying some words instead. And sometimes what we do is we map a lot of these behaviors to the problem statement. So back to the example I gave about retention, right? if retention is a problem, then probably your target behaviors would be something like they would be doing revision, they would be asking questions, they would be helping each other, right? They will be having advocates actually sharing with one another what they have learned from the class as well, right? So again, this is a very recursive and reiterative process as well. Sometimes you're not able to determine all these things over here, right? You can always come back to the drawing board and rework this cycle again.
Yep. So actually the focus group, the mention of the focus group brings us to the fourth point. So that's the describe and profile your players. So up to step 3 so far, you might be wondering, like, how do I even know any of this? How do I know whether this is true, or how can I validate this? So, and how can I also validate what is my actual target group? What's their persona? So that's where we really encourage you, if you can, try to gather up, you know, at least a small sample of your target audience, so you can ask them these questions. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is where we can introduce Bartle's 4 player types. But these are the 4 player types that are quite common in a lot of, you know, games, not just games, but also gamification strategies. So you can see that there's 4 types, and they're all motivated by different things. So you can see there's the killer, who's motivated on a lot of winning, rank, and direct peer-to-peer competition. So you can see that, you know, they can be engaged by this gamification mechanic, which is the, game mechanics, leaderboards and ranks as well. Socializers, people who are engaged by community interaction, being able to know that they're in a group with other people and kind of working together, being able to chat with each other. Achievers as well, so things such as, you know, achievement badges, knowing that they are kind of able to achieve 100% completion. So these are achievers. And explorers are people who, I guess, for an example that I would use in this case is that if you're on an e-commerce website, they might be able to find like a secret page that no one else has been able to find. And that's a very good example. They feel very motivated that, oh, I'm in this secret group that I found this secret coupon code or a secret product that no one else has been able to find. Okay, so I think that we have a poll now as well. I think Jiling has set this up as well.
Yep.
So, yep. Okay, so based on the descriptions here, which player type do you think you are?
So, Keith, what player type are you? Just curious.
You know, when I first saw this framework, I thought I was a killer, because I thought I've always been very competitive. And then I realized that when I do play games, I'm actually more of an achiever and explorer. Yeah, so I realized that you know, during this circuit breaker, there are a lot of people doing all sorts of learning new things, right? Some people are learning programming, some people are learning how to cook, even for the first time, right? But I'm the type of guy who is making like yogurt on my own, like from scratch as well. And I'm also making like bean curd, soya tau hui. So I'm an explorer. I like to do things that nobody else is doing.
Okay, unknown territory.
Yeah, and what about you?
I think I'm a socializer. Like, without the social component, what's the point of games, right?
Yeah.
We do have a question from CJ. What's your basis for the profile? Any research work done? Good question.
So Butter is not a part of Gametize, right? Richard Butter is a very famous academia in UK, Universities of Essex. And I believe he ran this research to more than tens of thousands of video gamers in UK for a start, and then he opened up to global. And I believe the game that he was doing the research on was based on a game called MUD, right? MUD game, right? And this game is a very text-based game where you can turn left, turn right. I think it's a dragons and dungeon kind of a MUD game, right? So it is a very simple text-based game where you have to type turn right, turn left. It's completely console-based. So he ran this across like tens of thousands, and he got the numbers out, right? And he got the traits as well. And very interestingly, right, it was very quickly adopted by a lot of gaming studios who use this framework to develop games. So it is it's kind of like a Bible, right? It's a holy Bible where all the gamers would use to develop games. Another interesting fact about this player type is that it's now opened up to more than hundreds of thousands of players have already done this test as well, right? It's based on a list of questionnaire.
Thank you for the generous sharing. And CJ has asked for the name. Okay, yeah. So there you go.
Okay, yeah, I saw there. Yep.
Yep.
Someone else's Wendy is provided. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we can end the poll.
Oh yeah.
Well.
Oh, we have explorers and achievers. So
Okay. So actually
a
only
good spread.
yeah, quite a diverse mix of people. All right. So Keith actually mentioned that this survey was taken, I think it's 800,000 times, maybe even 1 million now. And then there's actually a very common player type. So the approximate breakdown right now is about, I think 80% of one type, 10% of another, 10% of another, and 1% of one kind. So this is just a pop quiz based on that particular poll that was taken by the general population. Which one do you think is the most common player type? The 80%.
Shall we launch, or
Yeah.
do we
we
want
can
them to annotate? Okay, poll. Okay. Okay. The last poll. Which do you think is the most common player type? Adventurers? Oh, is that a new profile?
Well, that name sounds familiar. Virus Besser.
Yes, Virus, that's our TV. That's why Virus can't say anything in case he gives up the answers.
Okay.
So the reason why we talk about the Richard Butler's player type is not because we necessarily do a profiling just based on this framework, but this is by far the only academically researched framework that we have seen so far that's closest to identifying the player types, and it's by far a very widespread one as well. And I also had a chance to speak to Richard Butler on the webinar like that, and it was a very interesting experience, which I'll talk about a little bit more. As you can see right now, I think 70% has voted.
Okay, let's share the results.
Right. Okay, so this is really interesting, right? Most people actually do think that killers and achievers are the highest percentage. All right, so Jilin, what is your answer?
I would think achiever.
Achiever.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll break the answer out, Prapim, if I may. So the answer is actually the most common player type is socializers, and that's about 80%. Yeah, that's a biggest number. Now, there's one particular player type that has only 1%.
Yes,
which one do you think it
Magdalene
is?
actually asked whether it's explorers in the
Is
chat.
she correct?
So the answer is actually killers.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, so that's actually also another myth that a lot of the mainstream crowd almost have, that killers and competitive players are the biggest player type. The truth is, right, a lot of people are not competitive when they play games, right? They play mostly because they are socializers. Now, of course, whenever we go to different conferences and we ask different groups of people, right, there will always be a lot of people saying that they think killers are the most competitive. Sorry, are the biggest group in the player types. For example, if we were to go to a marketing event, right, and where we are, where our audience are the marketers and the salespeople, right. In fact, they all think that killers are the only players type, right, and that's not true, right. As we found out, a lot of players are actually looking to form a community. They are looking to group with people that they have a common interest with, and achievers and explorers are 10% each. So there you go. That's a breakdown. Prapim, you can annotate for me.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll just
So
do that.
so that's also, so just to keep in mind, right? The main takeaway that I want to share in this particular slide is that always know your player types, right? Try to do a profiling. Are they truly competitive, or are they looking for more social experiences? If you make your game too competitive, right? If you think that just by creating a leaderboard is instantly gamification, right? You might be in for a very rude surprise, right? You can actually form what we call the electronic whip. The electronic whip happens when people feel pressurized to play a game, to compete when their interest is not in competing. Disneyland hotels implemented that for the cleaners, to create a leaderboard to see how many rooms the cleaners have cleaned. And I think the whole group of them almost formed a demonstration, right? They went on strike. They refused to partake in this game as well. So you can have a very negative adverse effect.
Yeah, and then if you think about that kind of system, another adverse effect is that, if the metric is really only to clean as many rooms as possible, then what's to stop, like, how do you know whether they're cleaning it properly as well? Yep. Okay, so I think that I just wanted to chime in as well that, despite the fact that in many games, killers may be a minority, it doesn't necessarily mean you should discount them completely. So the reason that many people think that killers are, a higher group than they actually are is not without reason. It's because they tend to be, the ones at the top of the leaderboards. They're the ones that are probably like the loudest voices in the game. And then if you think about it, if it's a lot of games where, there may be money involved, they are actually the ones that are willing to make the pay money to actually win as well. So I would say you don't necessarily, discount them just because they're a minority. But I think you have to think about the majority. So another example that I wanted to bring up was that we actually did this game storming workshop for a client. And then when we got to this part, we were asking them to create personas. So I'll just show you the next slide as well. So let me just clear my drawing. And then, so what we like to do is we like to ask people to create a persona. So we try to maybe create at least 2, give them names, give them actual profiles. So it's a little bit of, kind of generalization, but I think it's good in the sense that there's a bit more specificity to the actual personalities that you're creating the target audience for as well. And then one of the clients was like, oh, what about John? Let's say, for example, he always loves like points and being on top of the leaderboard. And then after some thought, they realized that actually John is in the minority. And in this case, they really didn't want the competitive element. Actually, they wanted more of the socializing element for their game. So that's why personas are quite important to create as well, rather than just, having a player type. This is where you would drill down further.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I want to talk about, bring up real quick, is that if sometimes, right, you do not need to reach out to the entire 100% of your audience, right? So just because you want to introduce learning, right, and it doesn't mean that you have to cater for all player types. So I think it is quite important to understand why do that 1% still make sense, and why are they still relevant. So I had a chance to ask Richard Butter in person, sorry, not in person, over a camera, right? Why do game designers still care about that 1%, right? Such a small percentage. It turns out that 1% of that player type is generating 80% of the revenue for a lot of game companies, right? Because they are the biggest spender, right? They create the most amount of impact, and that 1% can actually cause that 80% of socializers to actually bond together, right? So it's just like a common enemy that they have to protect themselves from. And if you kind of implement that kind of concept in the L&D world, right, you will realize that, hey, actually, you can actually leverage that 1% of the audience who are very competitive to be the advocates of learning, right? So I think let's be honest, right? At some point of time, there's only so much e-learning one can do, right? Personally, I think I learn best when I have conversations, right, with another industry expert, and then we debate, we discuss things through, right? And that kind of behavior can also be gamified. Now, if I am being incentivized to have this kind of sharing with my peers, right, and I'm getting rewarded and recognized every time I take a selfie that I've done my sharing with Prapim, right? And the key takeaway from Prapim is so and so. Then, then that particular gamification project has to be relevant to me, right? It has to be competitive, right? It has to be has the right recognition, right? I do not necessarily need to be given vouchers, right? I'm more interested in meeting Jack Ma one day, right? If this is rolled out in maybe a Taobao.com kind of project. So so that's what I wanted to talk about. And a lot of times it makes sense to also create multiple projects for different target audience. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, back to you, Prapim.
All right, so we'll just wrap up the 5D framework. And so the last part, this one's actually a long part. I think that we can touch more upon this in the next section, but I'll just give you a kind of a primer on it. So this is actually where the bulk of your work will go once you start to, once you've already devised the first 1 to 4 Ds of your 5D framework. So you start to think about, the visual style, game storyline, tones of voice, and the interactions to use. So I'll just give you the example here. So in the case of this particular use case, they actually wanted to do a passport where they are able to explore parts of Asia where the bank is based, and then people will actually complete challenges within each of the countries to learn more about Singapore or the region that they're in, and not only the region that they're in, but also more about the country itself, and also kind of like what what's the organization's presence within the company, within the country as well. So it's kind of got a very light narrative, but it's still there. So it doesn't need to be that just because you've got a narrative, you lean very heavily into it, where every single wording has to be, about the passport. It can just be as simple as, once they complete a certain amount of quests in the Singapore section here, actually they can earn the passport here, chop from their passport. So it's kind of like a little bit of employer branding as well, where they don't feel that they are necessarily being assessed, but it's just more to get them to learn a little bit more about the company. So even if they don't actually end up working for the company in the end, they know that it's a good place to work. Okay, so you can actually see here that once they've completed all regions, they actually unlock something called a quest. So that's where the actual assessment came in. So I don't have the slide here, but actually it was a very brief situational judgment test, where I think it was only 5-6 questions. And then what they had to do was that they had to answer what they would do in a specific situation. So for example, your colleague is constantly late to work. What do you do in this situation? And then it gives you 5 options, and none of the options are necessarily wrong. It's just more what you think that you would do in this in the situation. And then they actually did it where, the closer they answered to, the actual management in the organization, the closer you were in like the top percentile, and that top percentile would be the ones that would go on to the next interview round. So you can see that this is a gamification of the talent acquisition process, and they were able to kind of streamline and kind of cut the number of candidates so that by the time they even got to the interview stage, they are already screened by this particular game.
Mm-hmm. So I want to share that there's an element of L&D in here as well, where the applicants are also learning about the company through creative quizzes. And the other interesting part about this project is that, in fact, there were some candidates that did not meet the GPA cutoff requirement, right? But they went ahead to participate in this game anyway. And typically, they would not be allowed to go through the second round, but because of the points they earn over here, they were able to redeem a networking night. You see, these are the kind of rewards that money can buy. And through the networking night, this particular applicant actually secured a job offer because he was able to impress upon the managers who were in that session as well, right? So we were very glad to hear that, right? There was some unintended side interest of this game that actually happened. I just typed out a particular link called gametize.com/showcase, right? Prapim could show a little bit about the web browser, the web page. Okay. We have some more showcases over there, and there's this particular one that Prapim was actually working on, that was for a company in Japan. And they were actually using us to introduce the vision and values of the company, right? And it was based, of course, on the ninja storyline, right? And this ninja was able to collect different weapons for the as part of the whole game experience. Sorry, Prapim, are you showing that page?
Wait, sorry. I just realized my.
Okay, so please do check out over there. Again, there are a lot of interesting ideas that we have seen over the lifetime of our 10 years history, right? In fact, a lot of these ideas are actually provided by our clients. So you'll be surprised how good some of non-game designers can actually become. No worry, Prapim. I think we can just move on.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that actually we are starting to wrap up soon. So we still have a few slides to go.
Jiling, is it okay we overrun for 5 minutes?
Sure. I think we are good.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I can. Oh, sorry. You guys can see my screen. Great. Okay. So this is the 5D this Gametizes design strategy in more detail. So you can see kind of some of the points that we had mentioned during the webinar session just now is kind of summarized here. So you can see that's G, generous extrinsic rewards. This is where you start and then you end towards the end here. So yeah, extrinsic rewards, as I said, is a very good way to onboard people. And then this is how you can get them on board. But we want to try and reach the key goals where people are coming back to the app or to the gamification strategy that you created because they're intrinsically motivated, and also because they're able to, engage in social behaviors, create conversations and sharing. So that's where, the real magic, I would say, happens. And then people are engaged to come in every day and actually have fun to play your game. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that, okay, so if you guys want to have this slide deck, we'll send it to you later on, but we'll also, you can actually check out this link right now, corp.gametize.com/5D framework. So that's where this framework is in more detail. So that article there that we've linked here actually has more detail on the 5D framework.
I just put out another link as well. Okay, Prapim, let me help you tidy up the rest of the slides. You can take a quick break. Yeah, so this is where, I believe that if you are unable to retain 70% of what we talk about today, please remember to retain this particular slide. Gamification at the end of the day is to create happiness, right, for your audience, right? So just keep in mind, it has to be simple, it has to be easy enough, right? And it has to be rewarding, whether or not it's intrinsic or extrinsic. Next slide. And it is not magic. Just keep in mind, right? You cannot. There's nothing gamification can do for a very badly designed curriculum or very badly designed experience, right? But end of the day, it is an experience. It's a process that, like many others, must be well designed, must be well planned. There are no rules to fun, right? You can go crazy, but I would recommend you to steal ideas where possible. Next slide.
Sorry. All right, so I omitted a few, so we've made the wrap up a little shorter. Yeah.
Okay. Right, and keep in mind, create the right emotions, right? Create storytellings, right? Don't try too hard. Bring heroes, right? So one of the best practices that we always have recommend to our clients is loop in the top leaders and management in the company. They can have featured challenge of the month, right? So that everyone else knows that this is taken seriously right from the top, right? It's not just one of those projects created by someone that just joined the company as an intern, right? It's a project that is taken seriously from top down. And of course, come out with regular fresh content, right? It could be seasonal, it could be based on Christmas, it could be based on even circuit breaker events like this, right? And always do a lot of iterations. Next slide.
Okay, so yeah, I'll just chime in. So we also have the corp.gametize.com/scorecard article. So this is just assuming that you've already created a first version of the game and that you need to actually assess it. So these are the type of questions that you would like to ask, your focus group. So ideally, you can also gather a focus group of your actual target audience to play the game and to kind of get them to answer these questions. Has the goals been determined, for example? the player has been described in profiles.
Yep. Okay, I think we can let the audience check it out on themselves, this kind of checklist, right?
Yeah, I'll just go through.
Right. I think we have this particular conversation about potential cheaters, right? So just now we saw that there was this particular slide about anti-gaming mechanics. So just keep in mind, right, there will be people cheating, right? If they want to cheat, you can't stop people from cheating. But one of the masterpiece of element of a good game is that a very nice game would have actually ways for people to cheat and yet satisfy the objective of the game designer. So if your objective is to get people to do learning and they're able to learn about compliance, but they are actually sharing answers with one another to answer that particular quiz, for example, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Because they're still learning something, even though they are sharing answers with one another. So it's very important to keep in mind that sometimes cheating is not necessarily a bad thing, right? But and cheating can be fun as well. But of course, it depends on your style, right? Do you want to allow for that to happen? And I think we can go back to the toolkit, right? These are some of the best the tools that you've seen in the industry, right? To help you create nice content. And there are a lot of royalty-free images that you can use. In fact, our Gametize is embedded, integrated with Pixabay, so you can just search for words and you are able to load up different images right away. So you don't have to purposely download some royalty-free images. That's it. But I think what's really very important, right, is someone that can do it and spend a lot of time working on your testings, right? So, and that's why we recommend using Gametize.com, because it allows you to do testing at no cost at all, right? You're able to do some tests with your audience, with your colleagues, with even some target customers, right? And you will be able to do iteration from there.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I think that I just wanted to bring up another point that, yeah, I can't emphasize how important it is to have someone who can do it full time and do lots of testing. We've seen the best gamification strategies personally I've seen in our projects is those who we have at least one client who is complete ownership and they really are invested in making the project succeed. Yeah. Okay, so I think that actually we have one last slide. The opposite of play is not work, it is depression. Okay, so if you'd like to grab this slide deck, or if you have any questions we didn't manage to answer, you can send an email our way at academy@gametize.com. We'll email it over to you and then we can follow up from there. So for example, if you also want to try out the Gametize platform, whether it's a trial and then after the trial ends, you want to extend the trial, you can still send email to us as well there. Yep. So I think Jiling, we can start on the wrap up if there's any.
So I think there was a question from Kenny earlier on. Leaderboards are commonly linked to rewards and point system. All this to nudge people in the game. However, how do we not go overboard with this, that it only caters to killer profile?
So it is possible to hide the leaderboard in Gametize, right? But my default suggestion to this question is always to implement team leaderboards, right? So it satisfies both the 80% of socializers and also the 1% of competitive players. In the end, you realize that there's only one competitive guy in the team who's trying to rah-rah the whole group of his or her colleague, right? But that will actually create a very good balance, and based on what we have found so far. Actually, Prapim, would you be able to share with me the screen sharing? Allow me to do that.
Let me just stop my screen share then.
Yeah, keep the questions coming. You can unmute yourselves. You can type in the chat.
Okay, let me do the screen sharing. So I apologize that we're going to run 5 minutes overdrive, but this is going to be worth it for everybody.
So yeah, so if anybody needs to leave, don't worry, we will share the slides. And if you have some time, Keith, can I just share the link for them to give feedback if they are able to? So so you can carry on sharing. Thank you, Keith. Yeah, so if you can, you can just give us some feedback and then I'll hand the time over to Keith. Thank you.
Got it. So just now we promised that we will be able to share a link or some ways for you to get free access, right? So at any point of time after you do your trial, if you would like to continue using us, you would like to get extensions, right? Just feel free to write into academy@gametize.com, right? Mention that you're in-lab participant, right? They'll be very happy to help you out. And I think during this time, we have seen increased a demand for our solutions as well. And we like to be part of this movement, right? We like to provide you the complimentary usage as much as you can. If you did not find us useful, at least definitely I am confident that using our solutions will get you to learn about gamification that you can apply in your physical training, right? Or over your Zoom as well. And the other thing that I'd like to just cover really quickly is we have this particular game called the Space Runner, right? So corp.gametize.com/space runner, you can get there. And the reason why I want to talk about this is an example of a storyline where you will be able to see actually you're able to travel through space, right? And actually the game over here is there's a lot of compliance related content, but you can see the graphics all look rather cute. These are all royalty free images that we found on the internet, right? They are allowed to use them for free. So that has always been the principle of Gametize, right? We like to steal not just gamification ideas, but we like to reuse what's already available out there. So we spend more time actually doing testing for behaviors and also their psychology as well. What truly motivates them, and we try to spend more time doing different content, copywriting, style of communications. You wouldn't want to spend too much time actually thinking about things like graphics or even technology, right? Leave it to the experts, leave it to the free wide web of free internet resources for that. And the showcase document that I was talking about just now, right? corp.gametize.com/showcase. Let me know if there are questions coming in. I may not be monitoring. Okay, so that is the showcase deck that I wanted to show. So this is a game that we implemented. It's a self-really challenge game. This is a Get Smart English game. It allows you to learn English through a spy storyline. And again, these are all graphics that is from our database. So we are putting it out there on gametize.com for everyone to reuse. That's the game that Prapim was talking about. And we have.
Yep. So you can see a lot of different use cases. Some of them are more marketing, like the Lux example that Keith showed very briefly just now. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And this is another simple game about learning grammar through cute food images. And that's a Space Runner. So again, I recommend you to feel free to steal the ideas from us, right? Whether or not you're using Gametize or not. Okay, we don't appear to have any more new questions. And if anyone has would like to reach out to us, again, feel free to add me on LinkedIn, right? I'm just going to type in my my LinkedIn profile. Let's see, com/in/. Feel free to connect over here, and I'm going to put my email address here as well. And you, of course, you already saw the Academy email address. So let's connect and chat over a virtual Zoom coffee.
Or lunch.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, we want to see you guys next session as well. If you're interested to learn a little bit more about how to actually use the Gametize platform in more detail than what you saw in this session.
Yeah, that's happening in 2 weeks' time. That will be 28th of May, same time, 3 to 5.
Yes, it's possible, right? Since it's free to use, right? Feel free to spend some time to just give the solution a spin, right? It is an incredibly easy to use solution. And by the time you come to the workshop, you might even be able to ask certain questions that you can directly ask because you have already used a solution and you know what are the challenges that you're facing. Yeah.
Home-based learning.
Home-based learning. That one.
Workshop.
Home-based learning, very hard to solve problem.
Okay. Anybody has questions?
So while we spend the remaining last minute, right? I'm just running through the platform to let people see what kind of settings they can have, right, on the platform. And we have things like configuring point system and allowing bonus points to be earned. And I'm going to show that how the analytics looks like.
So this is a preview for next session in 2 weeks' time.
Yes.
And
And
I think Mike asked, do we need to play the charisma game before the next workshop? Well, no, but that would be really good if you could. Yeah, and then Justin asked what happens after 7 days. So it reverts back to a free plan. Yeah.
So a free plan has certain restrictions, but you can still keep it. You can still use it, right? If you need some extension, right, just feel free to try to ask, right? Since you're a friend of InLab, and we really want to be able to help all the participants here. Yeah, to Mike's question, do you need to play a charisma game? If you want to be charismatic, yes, please do, right? I think we still do not have a single player who has completed every single challenge yet. So if you're the first to do that, I'll give you a Gametize t-shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I will go right now.
Yep, no need to be today. All right, I think that's
that would be a good way to cheat the system, Jess, right? You will only start when you need to start using it, or you can forever keep creating new free trials again and again, right? That's also a possible way to cheat our platform. All right, thank you, everybody. How can we play the charisma game? So go and download the Gametize app. That's one way to do it. I'm going to put down the link, gametize.com/app. That's one way. Or you can go to, you can play it from the laptop, right? You can go to app.gametize.com straight away, download an account, and you can see it from the featured games. Or if you're really feeling very, very gung-ho and you want to be able to play the game right away, you can just straight away go to the game. So that's where you can start becoming charismatic. It really is my favorite example to showcase all time because it is so simple. You get to learn something just by doing something, and I think that is a very exceptional workflow for L&D. It's just like on-the-job training, right? It's a real thing after all.
okay. So I think that's all. I think we can wrap up.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So if there are no further questions, yep. I would like to wish everybody a good evening. Have a great time playing the game on games on Gametize, and join us in 2 weeks' time, where we'll get the Gametize team to show us how to use the platform properly, how to create awesome games, to engage your learners, to even engage your employees, for example, and any stakeholders you would like to engage. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for taking 2 hours of your time, spending your Thursday afternoon with us. Anything else, Red, Keith, and Prapim, and Kumar?
Nope.
We can look forward to Kumar's presentation and the walkthrough, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, right, please continue to play more games. I strongly recommend this game called Rumi Cup. It's fantastic for your brain. It's fantastic to kill time. My mom is spending 5 to 6 hours every day on that.
Okay. All right. I will try that.
Okay. Cheers.
All right.
Bye bye.
Thanks for all the sharing, Gametize team. Thank you.
See everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you.